excite you with pictures of furniture. It started out sort of last year. CUBO asked us to do some research into fit outs of student accommodation. So we put out a sort of call to members, and everyone's obviously extremely busy, and so we had a few responses, which so we didn't quite do the statistical analysis of what people were specifying that we'd imagined, but we did get some really interesting qualitative responses back. So what we've put together, I think Sarah, this hasn't been issued yet, but I think it will be immediately after this workshop, is a short paper we put together, just collating those thoughts into themes and adding our own. So I'll just flash that up actually, and so you can see what that is. And I just wanted to pull 3 themes that are really important to us in the work that we're doing on various projects at the minute, in terms of what's going on. So can you all see that? I can see your screen. Put your thumbs up, Sarah, if you can see that, because I can only see. That's excellent. So it's rather fun, because rather than boring you with pictures of various student rooms, we've illustrated this with some great illustrations from a 1912 Harrods catalogue, which you can see how sort of time has moved on or not moved on in the last 100 years. So many thanks to the 6 members shown here for sharing their thoughts. As I say, I won't read through this, but just wanted to flick through a few really important points. So you'll see what we've done is to sort of theme some of the findings from members and talk about those in the round, and hopefully provide some interesting insights. One thing I wanted to touch upon here is shown on the right. One thing is one member was describing a design-led approach, by which is meant really trying to get under the skin of doing a whole flat at once, a whole sort of staircore or hall at once, rather than trying to do things piecemeal as budgets often dictate. And I think that's quite an important approach, because we've seen quite a few halls up and down the country where the opposite has been done, and you've had sort of various elements replaced over time as budgets and life cycle allows, and we've often seen a real mishmash of styles and bits of furniture here and there that don't really go. And quite apart from being aesthetic about it, I think it matters in terms of making the best use of space within a room. And if you can have something coordinated that really makes use of every square metre, you can have a much better feel, and it will feel bigger than before. And I'm sure JT Ellis College will come on to that. The other question, some other sort of points here. The other question we asked, and I'm sure we'll come on to that, and interesting to get your views on this, is that second column. Does specifying elements for durability and longevity always mean that they feel institutional? Because there's a real balance to be had between putting things in that last and trying to make things homely and not feel like dentists' waiting rooms, and that's a really difficult balance to get that sort of get that. So that's something we looked at a bit, and we're going to talk about in a bit. And lastly, sustainability, and one thing we were really interested in trying to get it under, and we didn't succeed with this particular report, but we're still asking the question on other projects, is obviously sustainability is on everyone's minds in terms of carbon reduction, reducing the reliance on paying enormous utility bills. How much are students willing to pay for something that is over and above a sustainable baseline? So that's one question we had in our mind. So this report will be shared, I think, with members after this call. So obviously have fun reading it, and hope it stimulates some debate. So I won't go through this now, but I will hand over to JT Ellis, who I think has got some other more live examples of some of these questions.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Thank you for that. So yeah, I'm Andrew Langford. As has already been said, I'm the marketing manager at JT Ellis. So I'm going to run through a presentation with you over the next, 20 minutes, half an hour with Johnny, who's the head of our student accommodation. If you've got any questions, feel free just to to put them in the chat as we go through.
And often, Andrew, if you're presenting, you can't see who's got their hand up, so I'll try and do that and
Okay.
just flag up if someone's wants to chip in.
Right. So so the kind of title for this roundtable discussion is really kind of practical tips on refurbishing residences. And as Robert already mentioned, the importance of sustainable solutions, but also products that have got a long kind of life cycle. So we'll show you a few kind of practical examples as we run through. So I guess it would be remiss of me to assume that you've all heard of JT Ellis. So although we've been in this sector for a long time, I will tell you a little bit about us.
Oh, okay, yeah, no idea what she is.
Then we've got we're going to run you through 3 kind of case studies, recent case studies, and that will cover off student bedroom furniture, but also shared kitchens, and the kind of challenges that we faced on those projects, and hopefully the solutions that we've delivered for the for the institution and also for the students. Then we're going to just talk very briefly about when you're kind of planning a refurbishment job or even a brand new building, just some of the kind of key pointers from our experience of some of the key things you need to think about when you're putting your furniture spec together in your tender document. As Robert's already said, sustainability obviously absolutely key. And again, we've got some examples of projects we've been involved with where we've been able to reuse some of the original furniture that we put in, as opposed to just starting from scratch. So looking to refresh schemes where we can, rather than have the full cost and disruption of starting again. And also, although it's been well trailed in the last few years, we like to think that there's real benefits from a UK-based supply chain, just in terms of the kind of controllable factors and the distances that things have to travel. And as I say, either Q&A at the end or as we go through. Okay, so I'll just introduce you to JT Ellis. I think all this slide is telling you is that we've been manufacturing furniture for a long time. In fact, over 100 years now. So we like to feel that we kind of combine traditional cabinet making skills with a very modern automated manufacturing plant. But that's what we like to think that we offer. So in terms of our kind of fit with the student accommodation market, as I said, our kind of supply chain is very much UK based, and we feel that kind of de-risks any investment decision that you make with us. This kind of big robot here, that's our automated cabinet line. So that's been up and running for about 9 months now. So that a big investment was made about 12 months ago, both to kind of increase the speed of our production, but also to make it much more kind of flexible, so we can do small runs of different cabinets in terms of colors and finishes as quickly as we could run our single orders before this machinery was put in place. So we've got sort of consistent lead times, which we're in control of. So we're quite an integrated business in terms of we design, manufacture, and install. As I said, we've been in student accommodation for a long time, and Johnny can take you through some of his experiences. And just to give you a little idea of scale, over the summer, we designed, manufactured, and installed more than 2,500 bedrooms and 600 shared kitchens in student accommodation, and we very much hope that we'll beat that figure, in this summer. We're also advising more of our student accommodation customers, if they can, to think about ordering ahead, just because you know, if we can manufacture the furniture up front for you, this just gives you extra added reassurance that obviously, you know, deadlines and delivery windows will be hit. And we've also got the space to do that for you if that's something that you would like to do. And then lastly, we do like to think that we manufacture the longest lasting products in the sector, and we'll give you some examples where we can actually show you this. So moving on to a series of case studies. So as I say, we've got 3 different case studies to show you, and I guess these are kind of typical of the schemes we get involved with. So this first case study was from Seabreeze Hall in Dundee. The project was undertaken in summer 2021, and I guess, you know, fairly standard challenges in terms of what we encountered when we surveyed the room. So the room was designed to accommodate a 3-foot bed, as you can see here. So, you know, the guy there with his laptop on his bed, very kind of institutional, if you like, breeze block walls, surface mounted trunking. When you entered the room, the first thing that you hear was like the sort of the side of the wardrobe. So the space itself felt very kind of hemmed in.
Yeah, quite oppressive. Yeah.
Quite sort of, yeah, quite kind of, yeah, quite depressing actually. Pinboard fitted over the conduits, as you can see here. And I think there's been research to show that students really don't like these kind of traditional pinboards. They prefer the more kind of glass or acrylic ones where they can actually write stuff on them. And the only mirror was actually out of view of the room itself. It was actually in the bathroom. So that was a sort of typical room layout that we encountered. So the typical kind of process that we would follow for a project is to do a full kind of survey of the room. So in this instance, there were 7 different room types across the hall, but one of them was more common than the others. So what we did is we kind of produced 4 concept drawings for the client, and then that led to a discussion, and that led to like a wish list of, if you like, mandatory requirements for the room. So the desktop space was wanted to be increased, and that was really because there were a lot of arts and design students at the hall, so they needed space to, you know, to kind of stretch out, if you like. As you can see here, the wardrobe was moved to the foot of the bed, as opposed to it was here on the original room. And then a full-size mirror was actually in the room, as opposed to being kind of tucked away in the bathroom. So in terms of the solutions that we delivered, as you can see now, the bed was turned, you know, has now gone from a 3-foot bed to a 4-foot bed. And we're also finding with beds on the whole, although there's still a lot of metal framed beds which have their advantages, we're finding that, if you like, a sort of a timber bed base is becoming more popular.
Typical Victorian nails. It's hopefully this will be.
Sorry, was someone asking a question there?
No, they're just not turning mute off.
Okay, no problem. Sorry, so yeah, so see, we can we've gone from a 3-foot bed to a 4-foot bed, and the room just feels, you know, more spacious. And I think the main reason for that, as I've said, is the, you know, is the redeployment of the wardrobe from when you entered the room to the bed. Having the large mirror and glass notice board again has helped light around the room, and the desktop now, as you can see, is much bigger than on the original. The other added advantage is we've put in a window seat, which, as well as, you know, providing handy storage, because of its location close to the window, is actually also, you know, allow kind of views out of the window as well. So that really is a kind of a typical sort of the projects that we would get involved with. You might be thinking, well, why did you not skim the walls? The reason for that is there just simply wasn't the time or the budget to skim the walls. The whole project was done in 9 weeks, so that really just wasn't possible. So that's our first case study. Moving on to case study 2, and this is a project that Johnny's working with working on at the moment. So I'll pass over to Johnny.
Hello, yeah, I'm Johnny. Pleased to meet everyone. Some familiar faces. So this is a job that we're doing at the moment with York St John. And the original furniture was provided in 2008. So it's 15 years old, JTLS furniture, very good condition. However, the feedback was it was starting to feel a little bit dated, and also they wanted to incorporate a 4-foot bed. That seems to be really common, 4-foot beds, please. So the idea was to simply by reconfiguring the bedroom furniture slightly, and by replacing the wardrobe fronts and the drawer fronts with a new sort of vibrant material, or in this case grey. That's not my choice. We could achieve that. So if you look at the next slide, we rotated. Do I click through, Andrew, or? There we go. So what we did here, we rotated the bed through 90 degrees. So we incorporated a 4-foot bed, and then the drawer fronts, the door fronts of the wardrobe and the desk, we provided in a light grey material. Obviously, you can have pretty much anything you want, but that was their choice. And it was, it's non-offensive, and it works really well. It certainly lifted it. It provided a modern feel. We didn't touch any of the bookcases, but by doing this, by simply refreshing the products, we were able to retain about 70% of the original carcasses. So it was a really good, sustainable and cost-effective solution. So if we move on to the, I know Helen's here from Newcastle University, and this is one of my favourites. I say that about everyone, obviously. Over at Bowsden Court, up at Newcastle University, we had a kitchen, a series of kitchens. I think there was 12 in total. This is actually replicated for a number of different blocks, and the idea was again, it was starting to look quite, yes, maybe in need of refurbishment. It's like, yes, it wasn't looking as good as it could. So the idea again, because it was JTLS furniture, the carcasses were in very, very good condition. So by simply replacing the wall unit fronts and the base unit fronts and drawers and the worktops, we were able to provide a sustainable and cost-effective solution that prolonged the lifespan of the existing furniture. We used dust grey on the base units, a lovely Halifax oak on the worktops, new appliances. We also used Halifax oak on the wall units. And also we used some really subtle lighting beneath the wall units, which just added a little something. But yeah, I mean, as we say there, we were able to retain over 75% of the original furniture. So yeah, a really nice cost-effective solution. Just a little response from Christine, just saying how nice she thought it all was, which was always a great solution which benefits our students. Let's move on to the next one.
I think I'm
back over to you, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm going to come back in here. So Robert glided through his research, but this is a little bit of a coincidence, because I'm just going to show you a little bit of product development that we've been working on. But Robert's research made the point that for desks, I guess students more and more are just looking for flexible spaces that are much more mobile than a fixed working desk. So Robert's research talks about, flexible spaces that can be moved around, rather than the formal desk and kind of chair model. So yeah, I'm going to show you something which is at a prototype stage, which you know, may interest you.
The thing that struck me about this was, as you say, some students don't want a desk all the time in the room and want to sort of expand in the bedroom for other things, but other students actually want more desk space some of the time.
Yeah.
So art students, gamers might just want that occasional extension. So it struck me as quite a neat idea.
Very good acting, that Andrew, wasn't it?
Very good. Very good acting, yes. So the actor is actually the designer. So yeah, well and truly multitasking there. So yeah, that's something that yeah, we're kind of prototyping at the moment. So yeah, it's a pull-out desk that will fold back into a lockable bedside. So when I saw Robert's research, I thought, right, yeah, I can certainly drop that into the kind of presentation. But you know, if any of you would like to see that unit, I'm sure Johnny could get it across to you. We know it has to be obviously, you know, well made and robust, but it's something which allows, you know, a unit to be pulled out and you know, in a creative use of a workspace. So that's something that we're working on at the moment, and you can see it, you know, in situ there, and obviously you've seen the video. Oh. So yeah, next I think Johnny's just going to talk you through, again from our experience, you know, some of the key areas of a furniture specification that we would recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to get the furniture that, you know, best suits you know, that a particular instance, circumstance, etc. So it's important that the furniture specification is correct. This iceberg, you know, we use this quite a lot. On this, you know, you could easily have two pieces of furniture, two wardrobes, for example. On the surface, they would look very similar. They may even act the same for a period of time, but you know, as you start to delve deeper, things, you know, things do become apparent that it might not last as long. So it's just making sure we get the specification right for you, whether it's Ellis or whoever. It's, you know, it's just making sure you get what you want, really. So what we were going to do is just talk through very briefly about specifying the right product for the right location. Can you go to the next slide, Andrew? So it's important to consider the space, you know, whether the furniture is going to be used in a bedroom, a kitchen, a common room, etc., etc. I mean, we probably get the most issues generally occur within a kitchen where you've got the moisture, and it tends to be around the sink area where people, the lovely students leave, you know, the washing up. What do you call it? Washing up cloths. That's it. You can tell I don't do much. The cloths overhanging the units, and it's, you know, water, as you can see from that example there. It sort of ingresses into the fabric of the board. It swells, and then all of a sudden it becomes, you know, unsightly and unusable. It might not shut, etc., etc. So it's so important to specify the right product in the right area. So, and that brings us on to the material itself, and it's the vast majority of our products, well, in furniture in general, would be manufactured from a laminate-based board, whether it be an MFC, a melamine, or a laminate. They're both very, very similar indeed. I mean, the laminate's just a multi-layered version of a melamine. They are so good. They are so versatile. The colours are incredible. The range is incredible. They're stain resistant, scratch resistant, impact resistant, water resistant. There is so many, you know, pluses to using this, and also it's carbon negative. You know, all the CO2 that's been absorbed during the life of the tree far outweighs the actual production of the MFC board. So yeah, again, we use 18mm Egger board. Again, it's sourced from the UK. All our boarding is FSC accredited as well. So it's thinking about the environment. It's so important. The next slide shows this. Can you go to the next slide, Andrew? The one with the, yeah. It's so important to think about, you know, where we actually buy these things from. And here at Ellis, we are FSC accredited. So all our materials are sourced from well, responsibly. You know, the Egger actually have a series of forests that they manage themselves in the UK and throughout Europe. Yeah, and it's just done well. So you know, well, one or two of our competitors aren't necessarily as responsible, and some, you know, are sourced from further afield, Eastern European, etc., and they, yeah, you know, you could argue, you know, are you putting yourself at risk from some of these providers? So just lastly, there's just a couple of different construction methods. The main ones are a cam and pin construction, and the other one is a doweled and glued approach. We prefer the second, the doweled and glued approach. That's by far the most robust joint available. It also enables us to, once everything's doweled and glued, etc., the unit itself, the cabinet, would go through a furniture press and make the unit itself completely square. So it's perfect. When it leaves here, it's absolutely perfect. Whereas a cam and pin, you've all been down to IKEA and seen the flat pack furniture on offer with the little metal cams and pins, etc. They again, if they're put together well, they can look good. You know, it's a cost-effective way of doing it. But again, we would argue that over time, these things can, you know, come to light. Should a student be moving the furniture around the room, for example, often these are you know, they're a non-fitted solution. So a freestanding desk, if that's moved around the bedroom, it's likely to become a little bit unstable and ultimately come away. And then we can provide a lovely double doweled one. So if we go to the next slide, which shows the image below, bottom left, that's the double doweled construction. And once that's sort of glued together, and then it goes through the furniture press. We've got solid rails in there, solid drawer boxes, four-sided drawer boxes. So if you need to replace or refresh, modernize, it's very, very easy to do so just by simply removing a couple of screws. You can replace the fronts, you can replace the tops, the drawer fronts, etc. And again, it's going back to that the old adage. It's a very sustainable way of doing it. It's a long-term solution. So with that, would just like to open up the room for questions, really, and see if that's generated any thoughts.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Do you want to stop sharing so we've got more faces on the screen? Yes, yes. Damon.
Hello, I thought I'd go for one here. It's interesting that you use some more recent examples of hulls, the 2008 hulls there. I mean, one of the battles we always have internally is trying to convince some people that some of our newer hulls aren't actually that new yet, right now, 15 years being a good example. What typically do you find the age of the hull that you're going in to refurbish?
In my experience, it can vary from as little as, well, 6-7 years. It tends to be older though than 15. So it would tend to be maybe furniture, but maybe from the 90s. And that's sort of, you know, it's done a good job. But now it does need replacing. It does need replacing. So it tends to be, I'd say probably from the 90s, early 2000s is quite typical.
I'm just seeing there's a few questions in the chat that we didn't come on to at the time. So just going back, Frankie Spencer, you were asking about, does it have storage under the bed? I think this is probably one of the slides that you were showing, Johnny.
Yeah, so that was on the very first slide you showed where you've got the beds. Do you do much in terms of utilising that underbed storage space, or do you leave that as kind of, I guess, free issue storage?
Well, Andrew and I were talking about this earlier. A lot of the it's often led by the client and by us sort of suggesting various options. I'd probably say about 60-70% we would provide a defined storage area underneath the bed, maybe like an MFC bed. The storage would be either drawers or an open storage, or it could even be an open flap. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So that would be the open storage. So it's a defined space which allows them to yeah, normally the larger items like a suitcase.
And then there's a question on beds again from Yvonne Colgan about, are you seeing a demand for longer length beds in schemes to accommodate ever increasing student and guest heights? I know from one of our bed suppliers that some halls are already purchasing 7-foot length beds. I can answer that from our experience for one project where we didn't actually specify longer beds, but we were certainly designing rooms to make sure there was the ability to reconfigure easily and cheaply to accommodate longer beds if that student needed one. Johnny, have you what's your
Yes. I was going to open up a drawing, but we just, funnily enough, the question was asked last week, and this is to do with Durham University, and on each floor level there is, I think there's about 12 bedrooms and a communal kitchen. Out of those 12 beds, I believe 9 are a standard 6'3" length, and the remainder we've increased it to 6'9". So that they are allowing specific length beds on each of these floors. Quite a small ratio, but nevertheless they are allowing for longer beds.
We've also seen it on that. Obviously, the problem is slightly ameliorated if you're getting 4-foot beds, because if you've got sort of taller students, then a wider bed, slightly diagonally, it helps somewhat. If you're really tall, obviously that's not going to help.
Yeah, I think that's the solution that a lot of people are using. You know, they'll have to sleep at an angle. But I'm just concerned that obviously every cohort that arrives seems to be taller than the last one, and you know, and particularly where we're building new rooms and the actual bed may be built into part of, you know, the furniture. My concern is that, you know, in 20 years' time, people will be sleeping at very unusual angles to fit into those bed spaces. Thank you.
But yes, it does. Yeah, that question does get asked more than you think. And for a couple of these schemes that we're doing, the live schemes at the moment, we are allowing a small percentage of the 6'9" length beds. Yeah.
And then there's a question from Dorothea on how have you found maintenance for movable, adjustable pieces? Which one was that? Was that particular sort of piece that Johnny was showing, Dorothea?
Yeah, it was the desk.
Yeah.
I just wondered how that works out, and whether people pull it too hard, how sturdy would that sort of solution be, and how's it been in reality?
Yeah. So when we're doing when we do a desk, it's generally fitted, so it generally be mechanically fixed to the wall with brackets, etc. So there wouldn't be any flexibility in moving the desk. However, there are instances where the desk is freestanding, and yes, there is some chance that if the student is dragging the desk around the room, damage could happen. Where it's not attached to the wall, what we've been doing recently is actually providing brackets, so it's anchored into the bedroom. So you're not giving the student the full flexibility of being able to move the desk. It's sort of classed as freestanding-ish, but I don't like giving them the flexibility of being able to move it around the room. That's when damage can start, particularly if the desk isn't well made.
And a follow-up desk question from Frankie: how many keys get lost for the desk?
Yeah.
I'm assuming, do you need a key for? I'm assuming you need
On the
a key
video,
for that.
on the video, there was kind of this key thing. So I'm just thinking, the logistics of putting a desk in like that. Does it impact things
on
like
that new design?
Yeah, where what kind of flooring you choose. So would it impact on what kind of flooring has to be in the space? Do you have to get kind of quite a few additional of the lock keys? I'm just thinking the logistics of those, because I like the design of doing something like that, but it's that logistics piece.
So again, it depends on the use of the bedrooms. But if these bedrooms are being used over the summer months for different forms of income, conferences, etc., quite often you'll find that some of the bedroom furniture will have a lock on it. Generally speaking, the locks are provided with it's keyed alike, so it would just be one lock, and then the maintenance guys, whoever it may be, they would just have a few spares, but generally keyed alike. There wouldn't be individual locks generally.
And then a question from Joanne about your Dundee scheme. You said it took 9 weeks to deliver the project. And I likewise, Joanne, I assume that's the summer period you've got to go in and do it. But what was the lead time around design, etc.?
I don't know off the top of my head how long that took, but Johnny, how long do you typically allow for the design process for a typical scheme?
Well, that one for York, the second example, which is a lot. Again, that's a live scheme. We're doing a phase this summer. There's to give you an idea of the scale, there's 150 bedrooms and about 80 kitchens that we've got to do over this very, very precise period. I think it's something like week commencing the 17th of July to the first week of September. So there's a lot to cram in. If we then go back, these designs, the specification was done prior to Christmas. So we walked around and surveyed all the rooms. I think it was November time. We then came up with proposals, project control documents, furniture schedule. And orders were actually placed for that job in, I think, January. So yeah, way in advance. And the idea being, with the York project, we are machining, assembling all the furniture. It's all been stored on our mezzanine floors. and then it's there to be called off in line with the agreed program.
And then I've got a supplementary question, Johnny, which is that leading period needing to get longer in terms of supply chain issues, construction inflation, problems with supply? Is that affecting some of what you're doing, or is that more
to a degree?
Projects?
I mean, as Andrew said earlier, overwhelmingly our supply chain is UK based, so you know we do have quite a bit of control on it, and we do carry a large volume of stock. But generally speaking, we are finding, you know, universities, not just universities, you know, all other sectors are being very, very organised and thinking about these projects well in advance. For example, the ones at Leeds University, we did samples, probably similar to Manchester University with Fiona. We did samples last year for review, discussion, evaluation. So yeah, it's thinking about these larger projects way in advance.
I think the other thing is, you know, projects of this kind of scale and complexity, you know, even if you're as organised as you can be, you know, there's always going to be situations where something could be damaged in transit, could be dropped going up some stairs. So, you know, there is going to be the need for the odd remedial. So I think if, you know, if something does get damaged, you want it replacing as quickly as possible, and you don't want to then find that, you know, you're into a longer lead time just to kind of get the job over the line.
Then a lovely question from David, which I've never thought of before. In terms of kitchen and bedroom layouts, designs, colour schemes, trends, etc., for new refurbishments, where's the steer and direction coming from? So who are the influences? Who's designing this new stuff?
I mean, I think from our kind of perspective. So although you know, we're in the kind of contract bedrooms and kitchens, so for student accommodation, we're also in other markets. So, you know, we're looking at house build, we're looking at retail kitchens. So our kind of designers are really constantly looking at the kind of the trends in terms of what are the new emerging trends in terms of like colors, you know, shapes or curves coming back, is it all linear, and kind of materials. And I guess within universities and institutions themselves, you're going to have different tastes between maybe UK based students and, you know, and overseas students. So, you know, I think we're constantly having to look at that to make sure that, you know, our mix of materials are contemporary and up to date, whilst also, you know, providing the longevity in terms of the durability of the cabinet that you're looking for. So I think it's a constant scan of the market in terms of you know, trends and what's coming, what's new.
Can I throw that? It's such a lovely question. Can I throw that open to the floor as well and just ask everyone? I mean, is there anywhere in a particular country you've seen some other student housing you think we could do that? Looks great. Is there another sector, retail, office, that you think actually we should be doing so? Have you seen anything recently? Open to all. You must have left campus at some point. I'll leave time. I'll leave time for people to think about that question. Hopefully an easier question from Adam. What's the typical cost for a 4-foot bed, 1200mm desk, drawers, and a double wardrobe?
I mean, it really depends on the again what you're trying to achieve, the longevity of the product. We've got several ranges that we can choose from. The 15-year guarantee stuff, I mean, that's unbelievable. You know, it's almost bulletproof, maintenance free almost. They tend to be a little bit more expensive. We've then got the 5-year guarantee ranges, which are incredibly cost effective. So a desk, can be anywhere from £200 to £400, and that would typically include that'd be like a pedestal desk with a 3-set drawer. Beds, depends whether you're going for a metal bed or an MFC bed with under bed storage. Again, it can vary from maybe 160, 170 pounds for a metal bed, up to £300-400 for a very complex MFC bed with lockable storage.
And then there's a few sort of examples coming in. From Michelle suggesting, I assume these are all places you've seen, you're quite impressed by. Michelle's suggesting the studying in Nottingham.
Yeah,
and,
studying Triumph House, it's called. My daughter's there at the moment in Nottingham.
So that's impressive, is it?
Yes, yeah, I'd suggest having a look at that. I think one of the things that impressed me about that was the like the kitchen, the communal like kitchen area. So if you've got, say, between 8 and 10 like students,
Yeah.
and rather than having like one like fridge and area, they actually had it on a swipe, an individual like smaller fridge units and drawers that pull out, but then that was individual to each student as well. And it was accessed by a swipe as well. They've got, I think there's probably a video as well, probably on their site if you wanted to have a look at it. But the rooms is
Yeah,
similar to the ones that you've shown on, your case studies as well. But they've got no underbed storage, but there was sufficient space to put suitcases as well. Just because when students were going back and forth and going back home, they would have needed some storage for their suitcase as well, which are not normally small.
No.
From experience.
Can you explain a bit about the kitchen diner being on a swipe? Which bit was on a swipe? The room itself or units in the room?
So the units within the kitchen. So you'd have like all your kitchen units, just like your sink, your basins, but then they'd have on a swipe. So it'd be like the length of a tall fridge freezer. Think of that space. You'd open it, that'd be on a swipe, and then within there you'd have like a small fridge at the bottom, and then at the top you'd have all your pull-out shelving where they'd have their own storage for their own individual items of like food and cutleries. But then it was all provided as well within. It was all provided as well. But I mean, this one is quite quite a high spec one, because it had like a gym equipment, like a wellbeing spa as well, but it wasn't attached to the to the halls. It was just like a separate student accommodation.
We'll have a look at that.
Yeah.
Study in Nottingham.
Yeah, it's called Triumph House. I think, and it only got refurbished, not refurbished. It was only built last year, and they're still building, so it's still in the process being built.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got that. Yeah.
So I just wanted to come back to some of the sort of questions we put to members in our paper originally, and one of those is, well, what's your general approach? Are you trying to? Is your focus to make things last? And go for durability and longevity, or are you trying to create something a bit more homely? I mean, is there a sort of do you have to make that decision? Can you do both? I just wonder what members thought about that, and what their principle is when they're commissioning these. Only my dog has got an opinion. It's
I guess we'd like to think you can do both, in the sense of providing that kind of home from home environment that you can tailor, that you can personalize, but also is going to be durable, functional, and practical. So I don't think they should be mutually exclusive. I think the days where it was only slightly old-fashioned furniture that was sufficiently robust to you know, to like thrive in a student context. I thought, you know, I like to think that you know, we can provide both now, certainly.
One other question we had, I don't think there's a consensus on. I'm interested to see what you all think. Carpets versus vinyl. We don't agree with this within Student First. We have different. I think it might come down to aesthetic taste. But does anyone have strong views on that? Never do carpet or never do. What's your feeling?
Vinyl.
Do vinyls?
Much more forgiving.
It's not only that from a health point of view as well, from the less things getting trapped in carpet, the cleaners find vinyl easier. People are now using vinyl a lot more in their houses, so vinyl's more the accepted, and it just lifts. We've changed now the last 3 refurbs out from. We didn't do full refurbs, we just did partial, so we just changed the flooring and paint, and the difference it made going from carpet to vinyl in Cardiff was huge. Someone didn't even realise we hadn't changed the furniture. All we actually did was change the flooring. And they said, look at this new room. We didn't even touch the furniture, but it just lifted everything, and lighting was key to that as well.
Absolutely. Anyone going to stand up for carpet? Anyone a carpet fan?
Yeah, I'm going to stand up for carpet.
Go on, Fiona.
I like carpet as well. It feels more homely, doesn't it?
No, I like both, and I think the advantage is, I think depending on the buildings, I think acoustically, it depends on what you've got. So I think some areas, I think in terms of the vinyl, it actually can help support kind of personalisation of a space, because it's students will then tend to bring a rug, more so to kind of dress the floor. So I think you can kind of, that's the benefit of having the vinyl. It's obviously easy to clean as well, certainly with increased numbers of allergies and things like that. But I actually think students like having carpet. That sounds weird, but I think they actually like carpet. But certainly in kind of the social spaces, we've moved more towards vinyl, because I hate to say it, we did used to have kitchens and things with carpet in, and it's just like, what? Whoever designed that concept, I'm not quite sure. So
yeah, my colleague, I mean, there's a few, David's standing out for carpet tiles, and Emmett's saying carpet in bedrooms but vinyl in common areas, kitchen. And the argument,
I agree with Emmett. I disagree with my colleague Nigel over the desk there. Definitely carpet in bedrooms, vinyl in kitchens, but also carpet in the living areas in kitchens as well.
The rule that my colleague David, who is ex-University of London, his sort of argument was carpet in bedrooms, because you know you get out of bed, swing your bare feet on the floor, and you want to feel something warm rather than something cold. That's his sort of general argument. I know it doesn't. Yes, moth-proof carpet in historical accommodation buildings, lesson hard learned. Yeah.
So I guess I've got a question for members. I mean, how kind of important is an extended product cycle to you in terms of your decision making process, or is the balance more initially about, you know, the visual look of a product, or are you thinking more and more about actually this product's got to be durable and it's got to last a long time, and if I can in the future refurbish rather than start from scratch? Is that a benefit, or do you, how long term are people's views on how long furniture needs to last?
I think just because we have a large portfolio of accommodation, longevity is important to us, because we just don't have the finances to keep going round. And I think in terms of the design perspective, I think it is really important. But we're very cautious around things that are very trendy, I'll call it, because I do think certain finishes. I've got some lovely bathrooms somewhere in a hall that somebody thought were great when they were in burgundy and blue, sinks and fittings like that, and I just wouldn't entertain something like that nowadays.
Yeah.
So I think it's, I kind of think for us, you know, we've had a long relationship with using Ellis in our portfolio, and partly it is because of the longevity and robustness of what there is.
Okay, thank you.
Helen.
Yeah, just to sort of lead on from that, I think what we've got to be mindful of is, particularly in university owned and managed, you'll have some halls that are maybe 100, 200 beds, and you'll have others that are 2,000. That has a huge impact on what type of furniture you're going to put in, because the refurbishment programme then becomes a massive issue. And I think it was Fiona that alluded to, we don't have the funding there. So to have durable furniture that is changeable is sort of the ultimate goal, I think. Unless, of course, then you start putting in 4-foot beds that have got slightly longer, and then you need to start changing around furniture and bedrooms completely. But in the main, I think that's the biggest issue you have. You can be far more homely and put some slightly more expensive products in a smaller sort of hall that's only a couple of 100 beds, because then you can refurbish it or you can replace things. But then as you scale up, the costs become huge. So you've just got to be mindful of that as well.
Right. Thank you. I think I'm just looking at the clock. We're nearly out of time. So Sarah, did you want to have say any final comments before we say goodbye?
No, just to update everybody, what I'll do following on from today's session is, once we've got the video link, I'll share that with everybody that's attended. Johnny and Andrew, I don't know, would you mind sharing your slides as well, that I can share those with the members as well?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
so I'll get all of those sent over to everybody afterwards. And just thank you to Johnny, Robert and Andrew for today's session. It was really interesting kind of finding out all about the ways in which the rooms are furnished, and the do's and don'ts, and the changing landscape as well. Thank you everybody for attending today as well. It's been a very, very useful session. And again, thank you to our host for the day, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
joining. Good to see you.
Thanks.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you.
Take care.
Cheers now.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.